Now, this morning we heard how New Zealand compares and where it sits in relation to our immediate neighbour, Australia, and in a broader OEDC context. Now we turn our attention to the question, will the benefit system deliver for New Zealand in the future? Three very different speakers will be addressing this topic over the next hour, and we begin with Professor Natalie Jackson. Natalie is Professor of Demography and Director of the Population Studies at the University of Waikato. Her research is focused on the different drivers and patterns of population ageing unfolding across regional Australia and New Zealand, and their consequences for education, the labour market, government, the welfare state, and business in general. Please welcome Natalie Jackson.
Okay, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it's great to have the opportunity to speak to you this afternoon because when we look at issues for the welfare state and for the benefit system of the future, I fear that a lot of people misinterpret population ageing as being just one huge challenge and miss the potential opportunities in it. Because I have just 15 minutes to speak, and demographers, we like to go on all day, I've pared it down to 15 slides, and I really want to focus on just the last 4. So I'm going to go over the first few reasonably quickly, and this is just to really illustrate the changing demographic context in which we find ourselves and what we're looking at in the future. And this is the broader context, part of the broader context referred to by Paula Rebstrock this morning. We start with looking at our age structure when our welfare state was developed. About 1898, New Zealand's first Age Pension Act was passed. At the time, or shortly thereafter, 4% of the population was over the age of 65. Access to age pension at the time, at age 65, was somewhat higher than life expectancy at the time, of course, which was about 58 for men and 62 for women. As you know, life expectancy has now increased by about 20 years over the time. So, as I'll illustrate in a moment, we get to this point now where we have around 12.5–13% over the age of 65, life expectancies of about 78, 79 for men, 82 to 83 for women, and a huge demand coming on our ability to fund that welfare state. Here's the age structure as we're at now, as I say, of 12.5% over the age of 65, median age of 36.5. Now, I haven't put in a whole lot of slides that I would have liked to show you how the age structure has changed over time, but really the New Zealand's age structure as recently as 1976 still looked pretty much like what it did at the start of last century. About 8% of the population over the age of 65, but still a very youthful population. And this is how rapidly it has changed with the low fertility rates, reducing the proportion of the population at the bottom of the age structure, and increased life expectancy, increasing the proportion at the top. I'm going to come back to this age structure at the end because it's this age structure that contains so many challenges and opportunities for us. I just want to, as I say, whoops, go the other way, move on to give this overall context of what we are heading for. Here we have the projected age structure for New Zealand 2036, i.e. 26 years away, and 22% over the age of 65. People often get concerned about demographic projections and say, well, you know, this is sort of future gazing and crystal ball gazing and so on. But if you like, only the people under the age of 26 in that age structure are not already born and on the planet. And using the New Zealand statistics, the Bureau of Statistics projections, the medium Series 5, means that we've kept the birth rate falling to 1.9 by around about 2026 and adding in net migration gain of 10,000 every year through the period. So the migration, any migration is not going to reduce population ageing. In fact, over the longer term, migrants of course also grow old. They add to the numbers over the age of 65. A quarter of New Zealand's older population are migrants or post-war migrants. In Australia, as my colleagues would know, they're 40%. And today migrants, their birth rates fall very rapidly to those of the population that they join, so that disproportionately they now don't replace themselves, and they also add to the structural ageing that I'm illustrating here. So migration can't dig us out of this one, if you like, whereas a lot of people think, well, all we've got to do is bring in lots of migrants and that will solve the problems. So I'm going to illustrate just a few of the challenges and opportunities by breaking population down into two technical components: numerical ageing and structural ageing. Numerical ageing is simply the absolute increase in the numbers over the age of, say, 65, but I think we should put that up since I'm now 60 and heading for it. Don't like being called old. And these numbers are 100% guaranteed. We know how many we have now. We know, say, for example, anyone who's going to be 65 and over in 10 years' time is already 55 and over. We know the rate at which we die. We know you don't get born at that age. We know the rate at which we migrate. So numbers projected ahead are, really quite rigorous and believable. Now, for most people, when they think about population ageing, this is the picture they have. Lots of oldies shuffling along hospital corridors and adding to the demand on our welfare state. And that is indeed going to be an enormous challenge for us. Just to look at the annual increment in the numbers over the age of 65 over the next 25 years. This year alone, another 16,000 will join those aged 65 and over. The following year, 17,000, and then it will jump up to around just on 25,000 more in that 1 year. And then every year for the next 25 years, as the baby boomers and the large cohort that follows them, wrongly called the baby bust, as they pass age 65 and pick up their pension, by the way, we will see an average 24,000 add to those numbers every year. So that is indeed an enormous challenge that we're going to face. It will be a huge challenge on the welfare state, I believe, to continue universal access to age pension at 65, but that's another story. I'm not going to go down that track here. Let me talk about structural ageing, because this is where I think there are a lot of opportunities, and if we don't break population ageing up into these two components, we may miss those opportunities. As I say, they are technically different. You can't see them out there. You just see lots of older people or fewer younger people or whatever, but the increase in the numbers is primary cause, increasing life expectancy, 100% guaranteed, and they're not going to go away. We're going to have to deal with it. Structural ageing, on the other hand, its primary cause is declining fertility, which increases the proportion of elderly or decreases the proportion that is young. And here you see, just using a few graphics, in 1961 the average birth rate in New Zealand at the peak of the baby boom was 4.2 births per woman. Today it is 2.1, or I believe just gone up to 2.2, and therein you start to see why our age structures are tipping upside down, and that is what we're seeing. To go back to my first slide, who in 1898 or around the start of last century could have imagined that we would have a population with almost a quarter over the age of 65? And these are, incredible changes that we're facing, and yet our welfare state is expected to accommodate them without too many changes to its various rules. Now, failing the stork coming along and giving us a really large increase in our birth rate, what we're looking at over the next, say, between now and 2016, New Zealand's population will grow by about 7%. At 65 plus years, it will grow by 26%. All other age groups combined, 4.5%.